In 1119, 9 knights rode into Jerusalem and were given quarters on the Temple Mount, in the ruins above the ground where Solomon's temple had stood. They called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. Within 2 centuries, they were the wealthiest fighting order in Europe, and on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, a king who owed them money had them arrested across France in a single morning. You have heard that story. It is on this platform 100 times over. Here's the part almost nobody tells you. Those knights borrowed the name. They were French and Flemish and English noblemen who took their title from a building they happened to be standing on. A building that had been rubble for more than 1,000 years before any of them was born. The men who actually served in that temple were different. They did not choose the work, and they could not resign from it. They were born into it, and they left behind something the Templars never had. They left descendants you can still identify, not by legend, by a marker on the Y chromosome, published in the journal Nature in 1997, and by a set of surnames that are still being written on birth certificates this year, in New York and Casablanca and Buenos Aires and Manchester. 15 of those names are on this list. If one of them is yours, your family may have carried the same job title for 3,000 years without ever setting it down. Through 2 destroyed temples, through expulsion from Spain, from Portugal, from England, from a dozen other places, through 100 languages that had no word for what they were, and so invented one. Stay to number 1. It is the name the Bible itself places at the founding of the priesthood, and it is still in the phone book. We start at number 15. Number 15. Sacerdote. In Italian, the word means priest. It is not a nickname, and it is not a coincidence. When Jewish families in Italy were required to register fixed surnames, some of them did the simplest possible thing. They translated what they already were into the language of the country they were living in. Sacerdote, and its plural form, Sacerdote, appear in the Jewish communities of Rome, Turin, and Piedmont, and Rome's community is the oldest continuous Jewish community in Europe, older than the Vatican, older than the Colosseum being finished. Think about what that means for a moment. A family living in Rome in the year 70, when the Second Temple burned, could have watched the spoils of that temple paraded through their own city. The Arch of Titus is still standing. The menorah is still carved into it. If your name is Sacerdote or Sacerdote, your family may have been in that crowd and may have been descended from the men whose workplace was being carried past them on a Roman soldier's shoulder. Number 14. Azoulay. This one comes out of Morocco, and it is carried today by tens of thousands of people across France, Israel, Canada, and the United States. The traditional reading of the name treats it as an acronym, built from the opening words of a verse in Leviticus that lists the women a priest is forbidden to marry. That is the whole mechanism. A family took the law that restricted them, compressed it into a handful of letters, and wore it as a name. It functioned as a record. Anyone who knew the verse knew immediately what the family was. The Azoulay lines run through Fez and Marrakesh and Mogador, and one of them produced Chaim Yosef David Azoulay, the 18th century scholar and traveler known across the Jewish world by the initials Chida, who crossed Europe and North Africa collecting manuscripts. If your name is Azoulay or Azoulay or Azoulay, your family may have been announcing its priestly line in code for 500 years, and doing it in the alphabet of a book older than Rome. Number 13. Kaplan. In Polish, Kaplan means priest. It arrives there from the Latin capellanus, the root that also gives English the word chaplain. Across Poland and Lithuania and Belarus, Jewish families of priestly descent took it up for the same reason the Italians took Sacerdote. It said the thing plainly, in the local tongue. Kaplan traveled well. It went to Chicago and Cape Town and Melbourne. It became one of the most recognizable Jewish surnames in the English-speaking world. And here is a caution worth more than the flattery, because this video is going to be useless to you if it only tells you what you want to hear. Kaplan is not exclusively a priestly name. Some Kaplan families are, some are not, and there are non-Jewish Kaplans in Poland and in Turkey entirely unconnected to any of this. A surname is a clue. It is not a certificate. That caveat applies to every name on this list, and I would rather say it once at number 13 than pretend it away. Now, before we get to the names that carry the strongest documentary trail, let me ask you for something small. If this history is landing for you, tap the like button. It genuinely does push this video to more people who share these names and have never once been told where they came from, and that is the entire reason this channel exists. And if you want the rest of this series, subscribe. Then let us get back to it. Number 12, Kogan and its variant Kagan. This is what happens to the word Cohen when it passes through Slavic phonetics. The Russian Empire had no comfortable H sound in that position, and so the name hardened into a G. Kogan in Ukraine and Belarus. Kagan further north. Kahan and Kohan in between. Same word, different mouth. By the 19th century, these were among the most common Jewish surnames in the Pale of Settlement, the territory where the empire confined most of its Jewish population. When the emigration waves came, between roughly 1880 and 1920, Kogans and Kagans arrived at Castle Garden and then Ellis Island in enormous numbers and spread into the garment trade in New York, the scrap trade in Chicago, the shops of Baltimore and Philadelphia. If your name is Kogan or Kagan, you are carrying the word Cohen with a Russian accent, and the accent is itself the evidence. It records the exact geography your family passed through. Number 11, Kahan. Kahan, Kahana, Kahana. This is the Aramaic form of the same word, and Aramaic matters here, because Aramaic was the everyday language of Jewish life in the centuries when the Second Temple was still standing and for centuries afterward. The Talmud is written largely in it, so Kahan is not a translation into a European language. It is closer to the original working vocabulary of the temple itself. The name concentrates in Galicia, in the region that is now split between Poland and Ukraine, and it produced a long line of rabbinic families. If your name is Kahan or Kahana, the form of your name is older than the form of most of the others on this list. Number 10, Maze, sometimes written Mazeh. 4 letters. It is an acronym, and it stands for a Hebrew phrase meaning from the seed of Aaron the priest. That is not a family tradition dressed up as an etymology. That is a family writing its own genealogy into 4 characters and handing it down as a name, because a name was the one document that could not be confiscated, could not be burned in a pogrom, and did not need to be carried. The Mazeh line is known in Russia. Yakov Mazeh served as the chief rabbi of Moscow in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, through the years when Moscow was expelling most of its Jewish residents. If your name is Maze or Mazeh, the claim is not implied, it is spelled out. Your ancestors put it in writing and then made the writing your name. Number 9, Barkan. Barkan, Barkat, Bar Cohen. In Aramaic, Bar means son of. The name reads as son of a priest, contracted the way spoken names always contract when they are said a few thousand times. You find Barkan across Eastern Europe and later across Israel. It is a quieter name than Cohen, and that is precisely why it is interesting. A family called Cohen is announcing itself. A family called Barkan is carrying the same information folded up small. If your name is Barkan or Barkat, the fold is the point. Unfold it and you get the same word. Number 8, Rapaport. This one has the best paper trail of any name on the list, and it is a genuinely strange story. The name appears to combine two family lines, one of them associated with the Italian port city of Porto, and the Rapaport family became one of the most extensively documented Jewish families in Europe, with branches across Italy, Germany, Bohemia, and Poland from the 15th century onward. Rapaport, 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 Rapaport. The family is traditionally Kohanic, and its members signed themselves as such for generations. They produced physicians in Venice, rabbis in Prague and Lviv, and scholars in Vienna. Solomon Judah Loeb Rapaport, who died in 1867, was one of the founders of the modern academic study of Jewish history. If your name is Rapaport in any of its spellings, you belong to one of the few Jewish family names in Europe whose priestly claim can be followed through actual archives, generation by generation, for something like 500 years. Number 7, Kogan and Kagan. This is the German and Alsatian form, and it is the one most likely to have been shortened, respelled, or quietly anglicized on arrival in America. Kahn to Cain, Kahn to Kahn. The letter H was the first thing to go, because English speakers did not know what to do with it. The Kahn families of southern Germany, Alsace, and the Rhineland were part of communities that, in some cases, had been in place since the Roman period on the Rhine, in Cologne, Mainz, and Worms. Those communities were destroyed in the massacres that accompanied the First Crusade in 1096, rebuilt, destroyed again during the Black Death accusations of 1348 and 1349, and rebuilt again. If your name is Kahn or Kahn, or if your family shortened it to Cain a few generations ago and never explained why, the word underneath is the same one. Number 6, Kohen and Cohen. Kowan is the Dutch and Italian spelling. Cowan is the German. Amsterdam and Venice are the two cities to picture here because both had Jewish communities that were largely built by refugees from the Iberian expulsions, and both allowed a level of open Jewish life that most of Europe did not. In Venice, from 1516, that life was confined to a specific enclosed quarter beside a foundry. The Venetian word for foundry was ghetto. That is where the word ghetto comes from, and it is where the Cohen families of Italy were required to live, behind gates that were locked at night. If your name is Cohen or Cohn, your family may have kept the priesthood alive inside a locked quarter for 280 years, until Napoleon's troops tore the gates down in 1797. Number 5, Kowan and Kagan. Here is the name where you have to be most careful, and I am going to be straight with you, rather than sell you something. Cowan is a common Scottish surname, with its own entirely separate origin, unrelated to any of this. Many people named Cowan have no Jewish ancestry whatsoever, and never did. But Cohen and Kagan are also, separately, what Cohen became in the mouths of English-speaking clerks and neighbors in Britain, Ireland, and America. Two different names that arrived at the same spelling from opposite directions, which means that if your name is Cowan or Cowan, this list cannot tell you which one you are. What can tell you is a Y chromosome test on a direct male line and family records, and in many cases, an older relative who knows something nobody has thought to ask them about. That is not a disappointing answer. That is the honest one, and it is the only kind worth building a family history on. Number 4. Cohen, the unmodified Hebrew form, and the one that stayed intact in the Ottoman Empire. In Salonika, in Izmir, in Istanbul, in the Sephardic communities that took in the exiles of 1492, when almost nowhere else in Europe would, the name did not need to be translated or disguised. It simply stayed. Salonika is the city to sit with here. For roughly 4 centuries, it was the most Jewish city in Europe by proportion, so much so that its port stopped work on Saturdays. The Cohen families there were part of a community that had rebuilt itself after being thrown out of Spain, and that survived until the deportations of 1943. If your name is Cohen with that spelling, your family line may have passed through the one part of the world where it never had to change shape to survive. Number 3. Katz. 2 letters, and it is one of the quietly astonishing names in Jewish history. Katz is an acronym. It stands for Kohen Tzedek, meaning priest of righteousness. That is it. That is the whole name, not a place, not a trade, not a father's first name, which is where most European surnames come from. A 2-syllable compression of a title carried by families across Germany, Bohemia, Poland, and Hungary, and then across the Atlantic. And because it is an acronym rather than a word, it is one of the strongest surname indicators of priestly descent on this entire list. A family called Katz was not describing where it lived. It was stating what it was, in the smallest possible number of letters, in a form that could not be mistaken for anything else. If your name is Katz, or Katzman, or Kax in the Polish spelling, you are carrying a 2-letter declaration that somebody in your family thought was worth passing to you above everything else they owned. Number 2. Cohen, the plain form, the one everybody recognizes, and precisely because it is so common, most people who carry it have stopped hearing it as a word at all. So hear it once. Cohen is not a family name in origin. It is a job. It means priest. Specifically, it means a patrilineal descendant of Aaron, the brother of Moses, and the role it describes came with duties that were performed in Solomon's temple and in the second temple after it, until the Romans burned that building in the year 70. The priesthood did not end when the temple did. It went dormant. Certain obligations and certain restrictions continued to be observed by Kohanim for the next 1900 years, in every country they lived in, with no temple to serve in and no realistic expectation of one. And in 1997, a study published in Nature examined the Y chromosomes of self-identified Kohanim from several different Jewish communities that had been separated for centuries. It found a particular set of markers occurring far more often among them than among other Jewish men. A follow-up study named the pattern the Cohen modal haplotype. An oral tradition about who your great-grandfather's great-grandfather was, maintained across 3 continents with no central record, turned out to be traceable in the blood. Be careful with that finding, though, because it has been overstated everywhere. The marker is not exclusive to Kohanim, and it is found in other Middle Eastern populations. It confirms a shared paternal ancestry among many men who claimed one. It does not issue anybody a certificate. Which brings us to number 1, and this is the name the Bible itself puts at the beginning. Number 1. Zadok. Zadok, 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 Zadok. In the first book of Kings, when Solomon is made king, it is Zadok the priest who takes the horn of oil from the sanctuary and anoints him. When Solomon builds the temple, it is Zadok's line that serves in it. Centuries later, when the prophet Ezekiel describes the priesthood of a restored temple, he singles out one family by name, the sons of Zadok. The line kept going. The high priesthood remained largely in Zadokite hands through the Second Temple period. The community that hid the Dead Sea Scrolls described themselves as sons of Zadok, and the party called the Sadducees, who controlled the temple in the 1st century, take their name from him. Zadok is the single most consequential priestly name in the entire biblical record. He is the one who put the oil on Solomon's head before Solomon built the building this whole video has been circling, and the name survived. Zadok and Sadok are carried today by families in Israel, in Poland, in Britain, in the United States. The Templars named themselves after Solomon's temple in 1119 because they were camped in its ruins. Zadok was in the room when the plans were drawn. So look at what this list actually is. Not a claim about superiority, and not a secret. The opposite of a secret. It is a set of families who were assigned a job roughly 3,000 years ago, who lost the building where the job was performed twice, who were expelled from most of the countries they tried to settle in, and who responded to all of it by hiding the job title in plain sight. Inside an Italian word, inside a Polish word, inside 4 Hebrew letters, inside a name so short it fits on a luggage tag. They did not keep records because they could not keep records. Records get burned. So they used the one container that travels, a name given to a child who gives it to a child, and it worked. It worked well enough that a genetics lab could pick up the signal 19 centuries after the last sacrifice was offered. If one of these 15 names is yours, that is what you are holding. Not proof, and I have said that 4 times in this video because it matters more than the flattery does. But a thread, and threads can be followed. If you want to actually follow yours, I wrote the guide I could never find when I started doing this. It is called Your Jewish Roots, and it walks you through it in order. The family signs worth paying attention to. What a surname can and cannot establish. How to read a DNA result without being misled by it, and which archives are actually open to the public. It comes with a companion database of 270 surnames organized by category, so you can look yours up rather than guess. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments, and it is there for anyone who has read this far and wants the next step rather than just the story. So tell me in the comments, is your name on this list, or is it a spelling of one of them that I did not read out? Because the spellings are where the real history hides, and this comment section has found things I did not know. Thank you for staying with me to the end of this one. It genuinely means something. Now, if you want the video that goes underneath this one, the one about what the DNA actually showed and where the Cohen modal haplotype turned up in a place nobody expected, it is on your screen right now. Go and watch it.